What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about compositional layout design, and that's a fancy way of saying how to add multiple controllers as child controllers. And what we're going to be building at the end of this video is something like this, where we have a view controller that controls the table here, and then we have another view controller that's a child that controls this horizontally scrolling collection view here. And I'm going to first go through a more simple example just so you guys can see kind of the benefit and power of this setup, and then we'll dive into creating this. So that said, I know I haven't posted in the past 2 days. I've been very, very busy with just life and work. So I'm going to get back to that daily posting schedule. So make sure you smash that like button down below so I know you guys are all excited for those daily videos. Subscribe if you're new. Get Xcode ready, get excited, and let's jump right in. Quick pause before we get into the video. If you haven't seen it already, I am hard at work putting together iOSacademy.io, a community where all of us iOS engineers can come together, learn how to build some of the top apps like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, in addition to interview prep to land some of these iOS roles at top tech companies. So if you're interested in the free and premium content to come, head on over to iOSacademy.io and enter your email address in the waitlist form, and you will be notified as content becomes available. That said, let's get into the video. All right, so let's get started by creating a new Xcode project here. And we're going to stick with a single view application. I'm going to call this application my child controllers. We'll go ahead and save it to our desktop. And we're going to jump right in. So first and foremost, let's select the simulator. I'll pick this one right here since I've got it open already. Hit that run button so we don't have to wait for it to install every time. There it is. Let me expand my Xcode window and let's jump right into it. So first and foremost, what we want to do is create 2 additional view controller classes, and those controllers will be used as child controllers like you saw in the beginning of the video. So let's right click this and hit new file. You want to stick with a Cocoa Touch class, and we want a subview or a subclass of a UI view controller. I'm going to call this first child view controller. Make sure it's Swift. You don't need a XIB or a nib file. Go ahead and create it. And let me create one more. And this one we'll call second child view controller, also a subclass of a UI view controller. In this one and the second one, go ahead and delete this commented out code. And let's give this guy a background color as well. Whoops, we need that curly. Let's give this one the first child view controller as well as a second a background color on its view. So we're gonna say this one is red. And we're gonna say this one is blue. And now we want to take a look at how we can add these controllers to our current controller here. But we also want a way to switch between those 2 child screens. So we're going to use a segmented control up here in the navigation bar, which we need to add so we can switch between the 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our storyboard over here, main.storyboard, and I'm going to select this view controller. Come up to our toolbar and hit editor, and we want to go into embed in and embed this in a navigation controller. Now we have the bar up here, so we want to come to our library of elements and find a segmented control, and we can drag this guy straight in there. And by default, it gives us 2 segments, so we want to update the titles on those. So select it over here. And we can actually leave it first and second for now. I think that's fine. But what we need to do is add a IB action actually. So in our view controller file here, we want to go ahead and add a IB action function. And we're going to say did change segment control value. And it's going to take a sender, which is a UI segmented control. And basically every single time the value of said segment control changes, this function will get called. So we'll know if the user has selected the first or second part of this control. I like to call these tabs. I don't like the term segmented control, but anyways, right click that and drag from your IB action to this. And for the event, you want value changed. And now back in our view controller file, what we can say is if sender dot selected segment is 0, we're on the first selection. Otherwise, we're on second. So go ahead and hit Command R to build and run that. And we should now see our little segmented control up here. And we can switch between the two. Now, obviously, we haven't added our child controllers yet. So let's talk about doing that. So we have this first child controller and second child view controller. We're going to create both of these here on the controller as a private property. And we'll say first VC. Let's call it first child VC just so it's more appropriately named. Like that. And we also want to do it for the second. So I'm just going to copy and paste it and be lazy. Let's make that second and make the second as well. And what we can actually change this to is a lazy var, a lazy variable. And the reason we want this to be lazy is we only want to instantiate it in memory once we actually call this property. I'm not sure if I have a video on lazy, but maybe I'll do one, but let's make it lazy so we can be a little more memory efficient. And we're going to create a function in here. It'll be private, and we'll call it add child VCs. Like that. Go ahead and call this function in view.load. Now what we want to do in here is we're going to say add child. And it wants a child controller. We want this one. And we're going to say first child. We want the property. And we want to call that for this one as well and pass in the second child. Now we've added the child controllers, but we actually haven't added the views. So if you go ahead and hit Command R to run, you'll see that you don't really see anything here. We don't see the blue or the red controller. And the reason is we need to add the views. So we're going to say view, add subview. We're going to want the view of the first child VC. And then we also want the view of the second child VC. An extremely important thing to do is set the frame for said views because it's not going to assume that it's the entirety of the screen by default. So we're going to say it equals view.bounds, which will be the entirety of the screen. And let's see, view.bounds. Let's see why this is complaining. This is complaining, cannot assign value if type direct to a UI view because this is supposed to be .frame. As well as this one, we're not assigning the view, we're assigning the frame of said view. And the last important thing that you need to do here, and a lot of people miss this for some reason, you can realize that every single view controller has its own view lifecycle. Things like view did load, view will appear, et cetera, et cetera. So when you add a child VC, the point of it is so you can segment out your controllers and keep things modular, but you still want the lifecycle functions to be called. So you need to call did move on the controller that is becoming the child. You're going to call did move to parent, where parent is self in this case. And you might be asking why parent is self is because we're adding those two controllers as children here. So go ahead and hit Command R to build and run. And you'll now see we have a blue screen, but we're not doing anything with it. So the obvious issue here is we're assigning the frame here to both first and second, and we're adding them to the current view, so they're overlapping. So what we need to do is add them to a scroll view so we can horizontally scroll between them as these tabs up here are changed. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is create a scroll view on here. So we're going to say private let scroll view is a UI scroll view. We're going to do scroll view. Can go ahead and return said scroll view. And we need to add this as a subview, of course. So we're going to say add subview like that. We also want to set its frame. So we're going to set its frame and view did layout subviews. Call super. And the frame of the scroll view will be the entirety of the screen. We want to add the child controller views to the scroll view. And the frames we also want to assign differently. So for the first controller, it's going to be a CG rect with the X, Y, width, and height. 0, 0, scroll view.frame.size.width. And let me put these on new lines so it's a little cleaner to read. And the height is going to be scroll view.frame.size.height. You can copy this whole thing, paste it down here, Control I to fix indentation. And the thing you want to change in here is the X position for the second one. We want this to be the width moved over, so you can paste in the width there. And the other thing we want to do on the scroll view is add some properties. First one we're going to add is paging enabled, which will be true. Paging, if you're not familiar, is it basically snaps the view to a particular page similar to your home screen on your iPhone or iPad. And the other thing we want to do is set the content size. We're going to say scroll view, set content size. Actually, we can just assign it directly. And this is going to be a CG size with a width and a height. The height you can leave 0. We don't care about the height for the content size. Realistically, it should be view.frame.size.height, but we'll leave 0. That works fine for this case. And the width is going to be width of the view times 2. The reason it's times 2 is so we can have 2 inner views side by side. And what we're going to say in this controller now, or in this function now, when you select a segmented control, in the first case, we want to basically update the content offset. And we want it to go to 0 with an animation. And if the user selects a second one, we want to go to CG point, and we want to give it an X and Y. Y is irrelevant. And in this case, we want to move over the width. So go ahead and hit Command R. We just added a decent amount of code, so we'll revisit it. So you'll see we have the blue view here. We hit this, and we should show the red view here. So something is a little off. So we can definitely scroll between them when they snap. So let's go check our colors out. The first view controller should be blue. Oh, the first one is red. Interesting. And this one should be blue. Okay. So let's go back here and see what I messed up. So we're adding both controllers. We're instantiating them as separate controllers here. We're adding both as subviews. The first view controller, we're saying 0, 0 width and height. And this one, we're also saying X, Y, width, and height. So these look appropriate to me. We're saying did move and did move. But for some reason, we are not seeing the frame of the first controller. And let's take a look why. So we're adding the scroll view frame here. So the reason actually it's probably happening is we're trying to lay out the frame of the child controllers before the frame of the scroll view is actually assigned. So if we move that call down there, you'll see the first one shows up here now, and the second one shows up there. So everything is working as expected, as it should be now. We can scroll between these. You notice when you scroll, the tab up here does not change. You can hook up the delegate to get that working, but this is kind of the basics of what I wanted working for this video. Now I'm going to do one more example that's a little more representative of why this pattern is powerful of multiple controllers being added as a child controller. So I am going to get rid of this IB action. And we can actually also get rid of the scroll view, but let me close my antivirus pop-up here. Get rid of that scroll view and get rid of this stuff. Get rid of that. We can put that back into view did load. And let's see, we want to add both to view. There's no more scroll view. And let's get rid of this. We're going to define this stuff again. Before we go ahead and run, make sure you go to your storyboard and get rid of that segmented control, or it will crash since we got rid of the segmented control IB action. Once you've done all that, hit run. And we just have our blue screen here now, which is our, I believe, our second controller. So let's do a more practical example of how this would be used in a real application. So let's say you have a screen where you can horizontally select some elements up here, and you can vertically select in a table view some additional elements. Now you could have one controller that controls both of those views, but let's say those views get pretty complicated and you have to fetch data and do a bunch of logic to basically populate those views. So one approach to doing that, like you can see here, is separate it out into two controllers. So we did that here, but let's actually lay out the frame more appropriately. So the first view controller, we can say its frame or its views frame is going to be cgrect 0, 0, view frame size width, and the height could be view frame size height divided by 3. And for the second controller, what we can say here is the x is still 0, the y should be below this controller up here. So we can basically take this height and put this into the y. The width is still the width. That's okay. That's fine. But the height should be 1/3 multiplied by 2. So go ahead and run this. Let's see what this looks like. So now we have the red controller up here and we have the blue one down here. Okay, so kind of getting interesting. We see both controllers on screen at once. Now let's actually add some views to this, these child controllers. So I think the blue one is this one. Let's do this one first. So let's say we want to show a table view in here. I'm going to set up a table view really fast. If you're not familiar with table views, I've got a bunch of videos on these, so take a look at those. But I just want to kind of illustrate why this pattern is useful and pretty darn popular, especially in kind of professional large scale applications. So we're just going to create a table here, register a cell, and we are going to add it as a subview like so. We're going to assign its delegate and data source. We're going to add an extension off of this guy so we can conform to those protocols. So we want UI table view delegate and UI table view data source. And we're gonna say number of rows, we'll just return some random values. We'll say 10, cell for row, we're gonna dequeue a cell, and it'll be of the same identifier we registered up above, so cell. Index path will be index path. And we can just literally set hello world as the text in here. It's kind of irrelevant for the example. And make sure to return said cell. And just so it looks a little nicer, let's give this table view here a style and a frame. We're going to say it's 0 to begin with, and the style will be grouped. And that reminds me, now that we have a table view, we also want to give it a frame. We're going to call viewDid layout subviews and assign the frame to be the entirety of the view's bounds. But keep in mind that the entirety of the view bounds is for the second controller. So go ahead and hit Command R. Let's see what we get. Okay, so now we're in business. Now things are looking a little interesting. So we have this table view, but it's only down here. And the reason is, it's kind of obvious, is the child controller's frame is only set to be here, and we've set the table views frame to be the entirety of the view's bound for said controller. So this is a pretty trivial example, but you can quickly, hopefully, start to grasp how powerful of a concept this is when you have really elaborate looking screens and controllers where you can really segment out the various responsibilities of the view groups to individual controllers. So let's do one more component up here just so you can see how you can really kind of get some power out of this approach. So in here, in this other controller, we're gonna set up a collection view. So we're gonna say private var collection view, and we want it to be a var so we can instantiate it properly. You can override the initializer, but I'm going to be lazy for now and not do that. So we're going to say this equals a collection view with a frame and a layout. And layout will be layout. We'll create it right above. And it'll be a UI collection view flow layout. And on this layout, we are going to say scroll direction is horizontal. We're going to say the item size is CG size, and it's going to take a width and a height. And this one's going to be interesting too. We're going to say the height is view.frame.size.height, as well as the width. It'll be a square. And let's see, we also want to assign this guy's delegate and its data source. We also want to add it as a subview. You'll need to force unwrap it because it's optional. We also want to give this guy a frame. So we're going to do that in view to layout subviews. We'll say the frame equals the entirety of this controller's view. And this is complaining here because we need to conform to the appropriate protocols. So we're going to do it in an extension down below. So we're going to say UI collection view delegate, UI collection view data source. That's not what we want. We don't want a diffable data source. We just want a standard data source. And we're going to want number of items. We'll return 20. We're going to say cell for item, and we're going to dequeue a cell from the collection view, very similar to the table view. And we're going to dequeue it with an identifier of cell for the index path. We're going to have to create and register this cell identifier, but we'll do that in just a moment. And let me go ahead and set a background color to said cell. We'll make it something bright and obnoxious like yellow and return the cell. Now we need to actually register this cell. So up here in the collection view creation part, we can say collection view, we want to register a cell. I wonder if we can get away with registering the base cell. I think we should be able to. So register a basic UI collection view cell so we don't have to create our own for said cell identifier. And I think we should be good to go. Go ahead and hit run, Command R. And you'll see up here that this is all yellow and it actually is scrolling horizontally. It's just kind of hard to see because it's using the entirety of the height. So let me make the item size a little smaller. So where is item size? Item size is right here. Let's make this 150 by 150. Go ahead and hit run again. And now we're getting something that looks much nicer. So the thing that I hopefully conveyed well to you guys is you can get really powerful looking controllers by using this compositional controller design. And the compositional part of it is you have this first view controller, and if you come in here, you see there's very minimal things going on. All we do is create these other two controllers in a lazy fashion. We set up the frames for said controllers. We add their views, we add them as children here, and we say did move. And the actual logic for the table view and the collection view are handled by these two subcontrollers in a very hidden and obfuscated fashion. So this video has gotten long enough. I think that's kind of what I wanted to cover, and hopefully I did a good job of that. If you haven't smashed that like button down below already for the YouTube algorithm, make sure to do so. If you have any questions, hit any errors, want to say hi, throw a comment down below. I'd like to reply pretty quickly to all the comments. Make sure to hit subscribe while you're at it if you haven't done so already. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay tuned, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.